This episode is made possible by our Patreon supporters, Cornelia Weiss, Aaron Gattuso, Kim Hokinson, Julie Gray, Jan-Elise Cannon, Heather McKinnon, Jill Harrigan, Michaela Frew, Valerie Jacobson, Amanda Gilmore, Maria Carla Sanchez, Jamie Lang, Chantel Oliver, Lindsay Cummings, and Peyton S. Hi, Katie.
Hi, Olivia.
All right, Katie, I have a very important question for you.
Okay.
Do you have an enemy?
An enemy?
A nemesis?
Oh, good question.
Do you hold a grudge? Is there a junior high nemesis that still raises your heart rate a little bit, or
yeah,
makes you clench your fist?
Oh, at the risk of sounding pretentious, I don't think so. I think I've been practicing a lot of letting go.
Practicing?
I do have sore spots.
So that seems like it's a thing.
An active...
You've consciously worked on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I've been thinking about this question a lot lately because of the story I'm going to tell you today. This story is almost always framed in terms of revenge.
Ooh.
A story of a woman taking revenge on her enemies and those who wronged her in a very dramatic and exciting way.
I love a good revenge tale.
Yeah.
Why do I?
There's a reason that revenge stories have been dear to the heart of humans.
Uh-huh.
For a long time.
But it seems like the message of all revenge tales doesn't give you what you were hoping for.
It doesn't work out for you. Yeah, and I have some questions about why this story particularly is always framed this way, and what might happen if we think about this in a different way.
Okay, very mysterious.
Today I'm going to tell you the story of Sayyida al Hurra.
Oh! The pirate
queen.
Uh-huh.
Literally.
We love a good pirate queen.
Of Morocco.
Mm-hmm.
There are many pirate queens. There is only, to my knowledge, one literal pirate queen. We seem to be talking about a lot of pirates lately. That's interesting.
Uh-huh.
I wonder why that might be happening.
Some kind of deep dive.
I wonder what that might indicate about
unearthed some
where
good
we've
stories.
Been spending our time recently. I'm Olivia Mickle.
And I'm Katie Nelson.
And this is What's Her Name?
Fascinating women you've never heard of.
Laura Sook Duncome is the author of 2 wonderful books about pirates, as well as being a licensed attorney and former public defender.
Ooh, interesting connection.
Which gives her a very interesting take on a lot of this.
My name is Laura Sook Duncome, and I am the author of Pirate Women and A Pirate's Life for She.
And I absolutely fell in love with Laura's take on Sayyida al Hurra in her book A Pirate's Life for She while I was doing research for an unnamed project. And I immediately knew I had to have her as my guest for this episode. Thankfully, she said yes.
Yay.
And Laura Sook Duncome's reaction on first discovering Sayyida was pretty similar to mine the first time I met this story, which is, no way.
I was writing a series of columns for Jezebel about female pirates. And when I first found out about her, I was like, this cannot possibly be true. This has got to be a fake one. Then I found out that she was very real and as awesome as she seemed at first glance. So that was very exciting.
The first thing we need to know about Sayyida al Hurra is that is not her name.
Sayyida al Hurra is a remarkable pirate, and we don't even know her real name. Sayyida al Hurra is an honorific, which means free and independent woman, or woman of independent means. and that fits her perfectly. But it just blows my mind that some of the greatest female pirates, their real names are lost to history.
Sayyida's parents were prominent and powerful nobles in Granada, which was a major Muslim capital in southern Spain.
She was a Muslim woman growing up in Granada around the time that Columbus was sailing the ocean blue. She and her family were getting kicked out during the Reconquista. So the Catholics wanted all the Moors out of their land, and she and her family were resettled in present-day Morocco in a little town called Tetouan.
Granada in the 15th century was a wild place to be.
Mm-hmm. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. But they probably expected the Spanish Inquisition because it'd been going on for a while.
I wonder how many Monty Python references we can squeeze in to our episode.
Challenge accepted. Now, as you know, southern Spain, Andalusia, one of my favorite places in the entire world.
Mm-hmm.
Incredibly beautiful, incredibly unique place. And a lot of what makes it so unique is because for a long time, Andalusia was this wildly diverse, religious and culturally mixed up place. Yeah. The convivencia, the coexistence, as it was called, was a period where Muslims, Jews, and Christians were all living together peacefully in this region for hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm. A real bright light in the Middle Ages,
yes.
I would say, that often gets ignored.
A very different story than what was happening in much of the rest of Europe.
Yeah, it maybe should be the star.
It definitely should be.
Mm-hmm.
Spain should always be the star. And now it is time for 1,000 years of Iberian history in 60 seconds.
Yay, bring it on.
In about the 8th century, the Umayyad Caliphate from northern Africa conquers most of southern Iberia, now Spain and Portugal, taking control from the Visigoths and the Romans, who had ruled it for a few centuries before that. And the Umayyads create a Muslim, Arab, Moorish rule in Andalusia. But Christians and Jews are allowed to remain. They're allowed to worship as they please. They even function under different laws. Muslim colonists will be governed by Islamic law, but the local Christian population will continue to be governed by the existing Visigoth law. And Jewish residents will be governed by their own religious laws. This is really hard for us in 21st century to imagine this level of sort of legal religious differentiation. But it worked pretty well.
Interesting strategy, yeah. It's that separate pods strategy rather than melting pot strategy.
Yeah. And a tactic that we recognize as being a pretty generally effective technique when you are rolling in and taking over other places to say, you know what?
Carry
Just do
on.
what you want. Pay us taxes. Do whatever you want. So some cities in this region are sort of partitioned off into sections. You'll have the Jewish quarter and the Christian quarter and the Muslim quarter. But in other cities, you have all kinds of religious and cultural and community mixing.
Yeah.
And you'll find a mosque and a synagogue and a cathedral all within a few hundred yards of each other.
Especially in academia. So much cross-cultural sharing.
And art and music and this is part of why I love this part of the world so much, because the architecture and the art and the city construction is completely unique. It's unlike anything you'll find anywhere else on Earth. Obviously, different attitudes at different times. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of years here. But in general, Andalusian communities were mostly peaceful, mostly tolerant, and in some places, actively working together. But, of course, in the background, there has always been a battle over all of this territory, the whole peninsula. And by the 13th century, the Catholic Reconquista, the reconquering of Iberia, really kicks off with enthusiasm. And the Reconquista eventually succeeds in taking back Andalusian cities, Cordoba, Sevilla in the 1200s. Finally, 250 years later, Ferdinand and Isabella succeed in taking Granada, the last remaining outpost. And in 1492, all of Iberia is under Christian rule. So, of course, they immediately kick out all of the Jews and all of the Muslims.
Yeah, or burn them.
Or, burn or kick out. Millions and millions and millions of Muslims and Jews. Sayyida's family are among them. She and her family are kicked out of their homes and end up in what is now Morocco.
And she and her family never really forgot the indignity of losing their home. So that could have shaped a lot of her childhood, becoming a refugee and having to build a new sort of identity in a strange place.
Sayyida is given a very unusual education for girls in most of Europe at this time. Not really unusual in Andalusia, but quite unusual in the larger picture. And at 16 years old, she is married to the governor of the city of Tetouan, who is himself an Andalusian Moorish refugee.
So Sayyida was married to the governor of her hometown of Tetouan. It was not a love match. It was an arranged marriage that her parents had set up. And she was quite a bit younger than her group. However, it does appear that they grew to respect each other and enjoy each other's company. She took care of him as he aged, and she helped him with the governance of Tetouan. And upon his death, became the sole ruler of Tetouan. That's not entirely unusual for a wife to take over her husband's business, but the fact that she was the sole ruler of Tetouan was pretty remarkable. And I believe she is the last woman to have claimed that title, Hakimat Tetouan.
She's not a regent. She's not holding the space for
she is simply
a male. She's just the ruler.
She's fully in charge.
But this is the 1500s, right?
Yes.
When there are queens, weirdly, everywhere touching the Mediterranean. Yeah.
Tetouan is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And some of the things that you can see there are things that were built under the guidance of Sayyida.
It's absolutely beautiful. It's sort of if you took a Andalusian white village,
Okay.
right, magnified everything, made it grander and bigger and fancier. It has a heavily fortified coast and a walled central city. It is incredibly beautiful. It is still a huge, huge tourist draw to this day. But when Sayyida and her husband first arrived, it was pretty much a ruin that needed to be completely rebuilt from the ground up.
Well, yeah, I was thinking this is the Barbary Coast. If you live on the
Yes.
coast, you're in danger.
You're in danger all the time. And you can see that in the history of the city. In ancient times, it had been a Phoenician trading post and then a Roman trading post. In the 1200s, there was a small Muslim settlement there that had been completely leveled by the Castilians, the Spanish, in the early 1400s because it was functioning as a pirate stronghold.
Oh, hey.
And then the city was pretty much abandoned for 100 years. So Sayyida and her husband definitely have their work cut out for them. Thousands of refugees from Andalusia are pouring into Morocco, and the city of Tetouan is about to be reborn.
Like the ultimate fixer-upper project.
And maybe it's fitting that a woman is going to be helping to lead that charge, because the story goes that the name Tetouan comes from the very early days of the city when the Goths installed a woman as the governor of the town.
Okay.
A woman with one eye.
Ooh.
And so, legend says, the inhabitants called it Tetouan, meaning eye.
Love it.
It has been governed by a woman before, and it will be governed by a woman again.
But these things don't happen by themselves. To create a new hometown and a new cultural center, you need money. And Sayyida knew that she needed money.
And she is also constantly being harassed by Spanish and Portuguese ships that are determined to take these coastal cities for their own. They want control over this very important entrance to this absolutely crucial center of commerce, the Mediterranean Sea. Everything has to pass through here, and her ships are constantly getting attacked. Her city and its outposts are constantly getting attacked by these Iberian ships.
So she came up with a pretty great idea, which was to approach the Barbarossa pirates, the famed Barbarossa pirates, and ask them basically to get in on the action.
Ha! As one does. There were other cities that hired them. We're like, hey.
But other cities hired them.
Okay.
Sayyida says, I have a proposal. What if we split the Mediterranean? And you take that half, and I take this half.
Oh.
One of the things people ask me all the time is, what do you still wish you knew about pirates? If you could make a magic wand and produce a document. I really, really wish there were some records of this meeting. I would love to know how this queen just kind of rolls up to the pirates and say, hey, I would love to be a pirate as well. Do you guys have an apprenticeship program? Is there an internship I can apply for? But whatever she said, they went for it. And they just kind of divided up the Mediterranean and pirated very successfully. I don't know what would have been more shocking to the Barbarossa brothers, her being a woman, her being a governor.
How does this queen just roll up to the Barbarossa pirates and be like, hey, I want to be a pirate too. Can you teach me?
Oh, is that the deal? Teach me to be a pirate and we'll split the Mediterranean?
We don't know. But somehow she becomes a pirate. Somehow she makes a deal with the Barbarossas.
I can see that logic. She's, okay, the reality is if I'm going to hold a coastal city, I have to be a seafaring person. This has to be a pirate city.
And this is traditionally a pirate city, right? This is why the Castilians smashed it in the first place.
Yeah.
It's a great location to be a pirate.
Digging into those roots.
I mean, Captain Barbarossa, this famous/infamous Ottoman corsair pirate who's been controlling/terrorizing the merchant ships of the Mediterranean for a while now.
If she's a queen, he's the pirate king, for sure.
Yeah.
He rules the Mediterranean. Yeah.
And I will point out, because this fact rarely gets mentioned, and I think it's important, I think it's just generally important. I think it's also important in terms of this agreement.
To note that he had a silver arm.
Oh, I forgot that part. Yes. It's important to note that he had a silver arm.
A red beard and a silver arm because his arm got chopped off in a battle.
Which is a flex.
Listen, we just need to know that to visualize it correctly. Okay.
Yeah.
But you were saying.
But also, Barbarossa and the Barbary pirates in general are usually framed in terms of, I mean, where do we get the word barbarian, right? These are wild, violent, irrational, barbarous
evil
men who are just randomly attacking ships for no reason.
Yeah.
And they are just driven by greed or by hatred of Christians.
Yeah.
These are evil Muslim men out to attack and destroy Christians. What rarely gets mentioned is that he kind of kicks off this pirate career because, much like Sayyida's kingdom, all of the areas around here keep getting attacked by the crusader privateers of the Knights of the Hospital of St. John, who start out as Christian monks running a hospital for pilgrims on their way to Jerusalem, and then somehow morph into a terrifying, brutal religious military order who finance their crusades against the Holy Land by pillaging Muslim and Jewish ships on the Mediterranean. This is not an unprovoked response.
It's religious warfare and a slave trade.
Yes.
And through the whole early modern period, the slave trade was alive and well, but it's not race-based, it's religion-based. It's based on what religion you own up to being, and then you'll be captured for it.
this is who Sayyida just strolls up to and goes, hey, I was thinking.
Fun.
And they agree for some reason.
Awesome.
And so Sayyida, free and independent woman, Queen and Governor of Tetouan, becomes the pirate queen of the Western Mediterranean.
I guess they sensed a fellow spirit in someone who was just looking to make a better life for themselves, and they were on board. And clearly they made the right choice because she was very successful at what she did.
She launches a massive fleet of small, very swift galleys that could swarm these massive Spanish or Portuguese trading ships from all sides. This is not the kind of grand-scale piracy we see in the movies, right? These are not galleons at full sail on the open ocean. Ships in the Mediterranean tend to follow the coastline. And these very large and slow merchant vessels are very easily surrounded by smaller, easily maneuverable ships. And then they're very easy to overwhelm with just sheer numbers. When you have small ships surrounding you, it's very difficult to launch an attack in all directions at the same time. And Sayyida was very good at what she did. How do we know how good she was? Well, when you are piecing together evidence from the past, the sources are sometimes not as romantic as you might have hoped. In this case, insurance records tell the tale.
Nice.
Our main records of her are from the people whom she attacked. We see in the Portuguese shipping records, like, loss, Sayyida al Hurra, again, so we know that she was very successful because we have a lot of insurance sort of receipts with damage that she caused. And so she took this money and used it to build her new hometown into something she could be proud of.
And within just a few years, the pirate navy of Tetouan had pushed the Iberian invaders firmly back onto their own turf. Any hopes they had of taking and controlling Tetouan are dashed, and now they are on the defensive, just trying to get a few ships through for merchant purposes, let alone invading. And from Sayyida's point of view, of course, she is a queen, rightfully defending her land and her people from these marauding Iberian aggressors.
For sure.
Who are attempting to push her out of yet another homeland. To the Iberians, of course, she is a dirty pirate. And this debate, I think, is at the heart of this question, but also this debate between pirate, privateer, all of the titles that we can choose to apply is always fascinating to me. Who gets branded with which title?
Yeah. Why don't we just call her a queen with a navy?
Yes.
Why is she a pirate and not just a ferocious navy queen?
Absolutely. And why are the Knights of the Hospital of St. Thomas privateers?
Yeah.
And Barbarossa is a pirate, when they were both doing the same thing. And I also think there's something interesting with a privateer is someone who's deputized by the monarch of a government to attack that country's enemies. Can you be a privateer if you are the monarch? You can attack anyone you want. This is the 15th century. Monarchs just attack each other, and you don't need a justification.
Yeah. And if we were using those terms, we would call Queen Elizabeth I a privateer.
Yes,
she was
exactly. So why is Sayyida sending out pirate fleets to fund her kingdom? Piracy, but no other monarch sending out pirate fleets to fund their monarchy
is a pirate queen. Yeah.
I'm not saying take it away. I want her to remain pirate queen. It's just interesting.
But she didn't personally sail, right? She just sent out her.
We don't know.
Okay.
We can't say.
Feels like that would make the difference.
Yeah. I cling
To the dream.
probably deluded
Yeah.
dream that she was out there pirating it up.
Yeah.
That's like a whole nother thing. Who is a pirate? Who is a privateer? Who is legal? Illegal?
You can take a whole country from another country, not be called a pirate. You can raid entire civilizations of all of their most valuable things and stick them in a museum and not be called a pirate.
Yeah.
You only get called a pirate by someone who doesn't like what you take in. Sir Francis Drake and Henry Morgan, these are all like heroes of English Navy. We decided we liked what they did later. So it is just fascinating when you study piracy just to see where the line gets drawn and how much the lines like don't really matter. And it's all just who is telling the story. And I think that's one of the main reasons why we don't know more about Sayyida al Hurra, because it challenges every notion of like what pirate is, what a hero is.
Who is a ruler? Who gets to be recognized as a ruler?
There are just so many things that she does that nobody else is doing. And it's very scary for people who like the status quo because she's not in any way following a traditional narrative. Piracy is so much a product of the time and place where it's happening, which is why it's so different over the millennium. You need certain conditions for piracy to spring up. And one of the constants is just able to adapt to the geographical area that you're in. You know, Grace O'Malley was able to be such a successful pirate because the English colonizers didn't know the map of Ireland like she did. The coastline's rocky. There's lots of little places to hide. When she could just kind of lie in wait, sail out real quick, steal a bunch of stuff, and then literally disappear. They can't find her. So she gets away with it that way. And I think Sayyida is another example of that. It's not these naval battles like master and commander, big ships shooting cannons. That's not really most of piracy at all. Pirates, they outwit and they outrun because they don't have the firepower of a legitimate navy, like ever. Like at any time in piracy. Pirates are not the best armed people. They are just faster and smarter because they have to be.
And Sayyida is another example of that. These coastlines are confusing, and she can hide these small ships very easily, come out, loot the ship, disappear.
Yeah. Home court advantage.
Because she's not playing the game the way that they expected it to be played. Later in her life, Sayyida al Hurra ends up marrying the Sultan of Fez.
Okay. I guess as a powerful queen, you would.
Ah, but you wouldn't.
Oh.
That's what I find fascinating.
A fun, sort of funny footnote of her history is she ended up marrying the Sultan of Fez. She met him once when she was still married to her first husband. And apparently she made quite an impression because he sought her hand in marriage. And she said, well, yeah, sure, I'll become your sultana, but I'm kind of busy doing my own thing right now.
So, if you want to marry me, you're going to have to come to me.
Wow. What a move.
He did.
Yes.
This is one of the only times in the history of Morocco when a sultan is married outside of his own palace.
Mm-hmm.
He came to Sayyida, was married in her town.
Wonderful.
She would have been in her 40s around this time. So it's nice to see a sort of middle-aged woman catching the sultan and becoming this pirate queen. And I just love thinking about what was going through her mind as she's getting ready for her wedding to the sultan. What must she have felt at this moment? Did she reflect on all she had been through and where she'd started? What did she envision was coming next? And the frustrating part is that we don't know what came next, but you have to imagine that she was feeling very hopeful on that day of everything that she would be able to accomplish in the future with the Sultan at her side. She took this power for herself to become the pirate queen of the Western Mediterranean, and now she's the Sultana, and just where else could she go? And what else could she do? And it's just really intoxicating to think about, because she's larger than life, but she's also just a woman on her wedding day. And that really sort of brings her story alive for me. And then they continue to live separate lives. She kept on pirating, he kept on sultaning. I love that about her story, that people may not even know that she was a pirate, but they know her from Moroccan history, that she was the reason that the Sultan of Fez left the capital to marry this woman.
She rules for 30 years on her own. And then her son-in-law decided that he should be in charge instead. And through a series of complicated and frustrating and irritating moves, eventually unseats her, and Sayyida just kind of disappears.
She sort of slips out of history. Her son-in-law basically sold her out, and she loses her governorship. And we don't really know what happened to her. We don't really know how she ended her days. It's one of those frustrating mysteries. This woman who was such a force, and then we just don't really know what happens to her in the end.
Maybe she lived her best life.
Yeah.
Without having to deal with any of this politics nonsense anymore.
Okay.
I just think she was too smart to get caught, and she went on to live fabulous life out of the reach of her enemies, just happily enjoying her Cinderella story. I mean, she earned it. That's my wish anyway.
The generally accepted story now is that she retired to her parents' hometown of Chefchaouen in northern Morocco. This is the famous Blue City in Morocco. If people have seen pictures or been lucky enough to visit, it's astonishingly beautiful. Wouldn't be a terrible place to live the rest of your life. It is said that she died in 1552, but we really don't know what happened to her.
She sailed off into the sunset.
Yeah.
Obviously.
It's interesting to me which stories get framed as being about revenge, and which stories get framed as being about adventure or freedom or the destruction of the capitalist oligarchy, right? That almost all of the pirate stories that I can think of that are framed as being primarily about revenge are women.
Ooh.
And I had never thought of that until this episode. There are some that are obvious. Jeanne de Clisson was a revenge story. She was very explicit about that. But Grace O'Malley's story is often framed as revenge.
For sure.
The Barbarossa pirates are often framed as being about revenge. But why aren't any of these other pirates framed that way? There are tons of pirates who generally attacked ships from one specific nation, for example. They're not framed as revenge, they're framed as privateering. Yes, Sayyida al Hurra primarily attacked Spanish and Portuguese ships. Those are also primarily the ships that are going through the area and that are attacking her country and her ships.
So they frame it as it's revenge for the Reconquista. It's a revenge for getting kicked out of Granada.
Yeah, that it's she's taking revenge on the Spanish. And I do think there is probably some element of that.
Yeah.
I'm going to take back a little of mine to restart our life.
Maybe it's like emblematic of the root of the entire conflict on the Mediterranean in that time period. You know, it's like cultural revenge on the grand scale is the Barbary Coast for roughly 500 years.
But no one's framing the Knights of St. John as seeking revenge when they're doing exactly the same thing. Specific religious groups, specific genders are seen as seeking revenge through piracy. Which is an interesting way to frame it, and doesn't seem particularly accurate in a lot of the stories. There are all kinds of, Christian European pirates who could be framed as seeking revenge and aren't. So it's an interesting framing that I think, like most of history, tells us a lot more about us now than it does about what was actually happening.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing about the term pirate and how we use it today. And we're in a, ever since Pirates of the Caribbean came out, we're in a cultural phase now where we like pirates. And so now we will put that pirate label on all kinds of people that didn't used to stick. Like, you didn't used to call Francis Drake a pirate, but now, oh yeah, he's this fabulous pirate. So now we're comfortable to put that pirate label on. But I bet in 20, 30 years when pirates are uncool, then those titles will be removed and Sayyida al Hurra, she'll be a queen again with a navy. But right now, when we love these badass pirates, oh yeah, she was totally that. Maybe the same thing goes with explaining why they are pirates. Because, as you've said before, we want the good-hearted outlaw. And so we give them a good reason for being a pirate. And
this
system,
is a Robin Hood-esque.
Yes, give them a good reason.
It's not stealing, it's justice. She's only taking back what was hers.
It's justice, yes. She was so wronged, she is right in claiming revenge. Yeah, so I think it's to do with whether or not we like the title pirate for the time being, and then how we're going to use those terms to make the people we want to be good guys. But in 30, 40 years, probably it will flip again. And we just kind of swap the terms around.
And then back, and then back, and then back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she was very much branded as a pirate at the time. This is a kingdom that has been pirates for a long time.
Yeah.
And
you couldn't be a successful monarch on the Barbary Coast without being or hiring or being in some way connected to pirates.
And you don't go team up with Captain Barbarossa and then say, how dare you call me a pirate?
Yeah. But I would bet they called her that just so that they could overthrow her without upsetting the status quo.
Well, if they did, it backfired mightily. Because she won.
A lot of the stories sort of contextualize Sayyida as a refugee who struck back against her oppressors. And she is definitely that. But she is also this woman who started her life in one place and then ended up someplace very different and married to the ruler of that land. I mean, this is a classic Cinderella story, right? Piracy changes so much over the millennia. The Pirates of the Caribbean piracy is what people think of when you think of pirates, and that was the golden age of piracy, but that's like 20 to 30 years depending on whose numbers you're going off of. And there has been piracy as long as there has been a body of water to sail on and something to steal. So, Sayyida being in the late 1400s, early 1500s, she's 200 years before Pirates of the Caribbean era. And so what she was doing, it looks very different from the piracy we think of, which is different from the piracy of ancient Greece. But fundamentally, we call her a pirate because she had the audacity to take something that someone felt like she didn't deserve. She did not roll over for her oppressors. She did not just go gently into that good night. She decided to take back some of what was taken from her and build up a new home for herself, for her family, for her people. And she did it with the help of the most fearsome pirates of the era and of that area of the world. And so I think she embodies so strongly the spirit of piracy. This is the root of piracy, which is just denying the course has been set out for you and taking charge of your own destiny. And I think she does that better than so many more well-known and more well-recognized pirates.
I love that. I had never thought of that as a definition for a pirate. But it rings so true to me that you are taking control of your own life and what you're going to do with it.
Yeah.
It's never too late to follow your dreams. It's never too late to become the pirate queen you were meant to be.
Huge thanks to our guest, Laura Sook Duncome. Visit our website at what'shernamepodcast.com to find links to her books, pictures, resources, and more.
You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook, where we post lots of photos each week.
Music for this episode was provided by Farya Faraji, Doug Maxwell, Astron, The Tides, the Mini Vandals, and Patrick Patrikios.
Our theme song was composed and performed by Daniel Foster Smith.
Our intern is Katie Boucher. What's Her Name is produced by Olivia Mickle and Katie Nelson, and this episode was edited by Olivia Mickle.